What's up, everybody? My name is Star, aka the Black Devotee. This is Bailey. That's my baby girl. I'm gonna make this video not like super quick because this video was requested by a young lady who follows me on TikTok. But she wanted to know a few things. One, how to set up your first Santa Muerte altar. She also wanted to know about the different robes and their colors. Why are you pulling on my hair? I don't like that. There we go. Well, I'm just saying. It's like if I was pulling on your hair, would you like that? No, thank you.
No.
Okay, no, ma'am.
No.
Thank you. Okay. But this video is going to be about ancestral veneration and Santísima Muerte. So.
And why is that about?
It's about what?
Why is it about that?
She wanted to know about ancestor veneration, so you know how we have our ancestor altar, and she also wanted to know about Santísima Muerte. So boom, you need to understand that they're two in the same, if that makes sense. So when it comes down to ancestor veneration, this is like your lineage, right? Depending on, especially when you're talking about African American is concerned, that's going to be correlated to hoodoo. However, even within hoodoo is like root work. Hoodoo is what stemmed from systematic oppression via slavery, and through that it was an attempt to preserve African tradition, specifically related to African American religion or spirituality was concerned. So what they did was developed a way to covertly still be able to maintain those spiritual beliefs and practices. But you'll notice that regionally is concerned, hoodoo is very different, right? So whether if you're from the Mississippi Delta, where I'm from, the Carolinas, even in Georgia, I'm talking about even like up in Chicago, there's subtle nuances that are pertain to hoodoo is concerned and how ancestral veneration is conducted and beliefs in regards to the roots and the herbs that they use in certain either spell works or recipes, and conjure was also medicine as well. So it was a way to help heal the community because they didn't have access to doctors or literature or X, Y, and Z. So understanding its roots is extremely important in regards to how to approach ancestor veneration. A lot of the things that you would incorporate on a Santísima Muerte altar and like your ancestor altar are one and the same, in the sense of like having some sort of image of them, right? You'll have your statue or image of Santísima. You're going to have water. Water is a conduit. Water is a purifier. Water is one of the 4 elements. So it's very imperative that you have that there, also as offering as well. However, on a Santísima Muerte altar, while those things correlate as well, when you're giving, and I noticed a major difference is like when you consecrate the water. So like, Father, I'm providing this water to Santísima Muerte, and Santísima Muerte only in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Doing that every time that you're providing altar or placing something on Santísima Muerte's altar. Just little nuances like that. One, again, hoodoo has Christian roots because their oppressors put Christianity on them, while the Spaniards and the conquistadors did Christianity too, but it was in the form of Catholicism. So again, even the prayers are different. When you're thinking about the saints that you work with, those are different. In hoodoo, think of Black Hawk, think of Uncle Monday, think of like, what's the chief, the woman chief, I can't think of her name, but High John the Conqueror, like those saints and stuff like that, and those energies you're going to work with when it comes down to hoodoo. You're not working with them in regards to Santísima Muerte, so you don't want to cross that over, okay? Just because you're not going to get the results that you're looking for, because those are 2 separate lineages. One is rooted in, like I said, Hispanic, Latin American culture, and the other is rooted deeply within African American traditionalism and survival, right? And practices, African spiritual practices as well. Now, going over to Santísima Muerte, in regards to the altar is concerned, however, here is how I kind of do, like, respectfully blend the 2 together, right? Whenever we have a loved one who has passed on, that's the time that you would go to Holy Death to aid in the grieving process. or you could go to her to aid in the grieving process and the transition, and transition into the elevation of your ancestor on your ancestral altar. Also, I tend to work with her almost as a gatekeeper as well, to ensuring that only ancestors that are working with me, that are there for my highest and greatest good only, because I have a lot of unknown ancestors. I mean, we all do, but I don't know more than, like, I think 3 to 4 generations back my lineage, and a lot of us don't know where we come from, things like that. So just to avoid the whole convolutedness of it all, I go to her to work through that. Also, here's the thing too, I don't think that a lot of people talk about this, is that for like right now my ancestor altar is not up, and the reason being is because I realized that the ancestors that I have been working with and that I know don't mix well having her energy in my home at the same time. And I think that strongly pertains to belief systems. And that's not to say that when they transition over into the spiritual realm that they don't view things from a different perspective. I'm not a spirit, so I don't know exactly. I'm just telling you what I've seen from my personal circumstances, that if you had hardcore Christian ancestors, understanding that you kind of breaking out of the box and breaking out of the mold and venerating or working with the various energy that's different from that, it may cause conflict. So even the placement of your altars, maybe not beside each other. If you have room, maybe not even in the same room. Just understand that Holy Death is a very big energy to work with, and understanding what she represents as well, right? Like, even Jesus died. And also I wanted to highlight the Bible is used heavily in hoodoo, whether it's Psalms, Deuteronomy, Acts, Genesis. The Bible is your manuscript in hoodoo. A lot of people practice bibliomancy, so that might be something that you could look into as well. But that's where a lot of root work, herbs, conjure, medicine, herbal medicine, that's rooted in hoodoo. Prayers are rooted from the Bible, rooted in Christianity. Whereas Santissima Muerte, she's Holy Death. She is the gatekeeper and the facilitator of death itself. So when you're praying her rosary, you're praying to her. However, Santa Muerte is not God, but Santissima Muerte is the facilitator of the inevitable. And like I said, she's a saint figure, like a folk saint. So again, the level of which they are different. So it's just like, some people advocate, and a lot of people advocate, you getting rooted with your ancestors before working with other deities or other entities and X, Y, and Z. For me, I attend to ancestor veneration. I still venerate my ancestors, but just not in the stereotypical way of having a quote-unquote ancestor altar. I have pictures of them up, but I don't necessarily have like an active working altar right now, because I'm still working out the dynamics of that. For me, ancestor veneration has been a very long process, and just my veneration to Santissima Muerte has just been a lot more fluid. However, I acknowledge the hard work and the sacrifices through her, because I know that even with them, she was that facilitator through that specific transition. And like, for instance, when my father passed, relying on her to just understand and come to terms with that, because without death, there is no life, right? Understanding that even a seed, in order for it to grow, it has to be planted in darkness. It has to be, in silence. And I think you need to realize too that in your journey with Santissima Muerte, you'll come across a lot of moments like that where you'll feel like mommy is isolating you, or she's stripping you away, when in all actuality, she's just prepping you for germination, prepping you for the highest and greatest version of yourself, which we kind of talked about that also in the scythe video, about just being open to what that represents and how it will manifest in your life specifically. So I really hope I was able to kind of like address that. Like, as a Black person, you can do both, but just understand where one is rooted in and where the other one is rooted in, and then understand, like, you may encounter some conflict sometimes, because your ancestors are not your ancestors. Like, that's an entity and an energy, a saint. your ancestors are the spirits of the individuals who were in your lineage. You feel me? So one is like your bloodline, the other is like a governing body or principle, belief, spirit. Does that make sense? It's like if you were Christian, right, you have God and Jesus, right? But then you also have individuals, which in the Bible, you know, you have in Genesis, it talks about the lineage of individuals. So think about the lineage of Abraham, right, and all their sons. So Abraham, Isaac, all the way down to Joshua, think of it, it's just it's a ladder, it's a step ladder. So while I view Santiza Muerte like below God, for me personally, I kind of view her a little bit above my ancestors in the sense of respect is concerned, and how you even approach her, the mannerisms, in regards to, you know, a little bit of due diligence of just giving offerings to give offerings. However, that's not to say that your ancestors are not important, because without them there would be no you. Does that make sense? But Santísima Muerte like supersedes all in regards to being there at the beginning of the time of creation. So like I said, the energy is just different. So the way you approach it is completely different, and the level of respect that needs to be there is completely different as well. And like I said, even when it comes down to your prayers, like I said, a rosary prayer or Hail Marys and Glory Bees, those are different than what people normally do in hoodoo, because that's rooted out of the Bible. Those are rooted out of, you know, ethnic prayer, and rooted out of survival. So I really hope I was able to like answer that. You can definitely do them at the same time. It's just, it is a difference, because cultural relevance is super important. As an African American person, you need to understand your roots and understand what they need, and then you need to understand the cultural roots and origins of Santísima Muerte and Holy Death and what she needs. And once you're able to do those together, then you're able to, you know, cohabitate them. However, you know, you're definitely not going to want to put them on the same altar. I don't say you definitely not want to, because there are some people who do have members who have passed away and they put them on her altar, but it's not something that I've done. I've personally seen best results when she has her own space to come, when I've consecrated a specific space for her to be at and for her to, you know, reside, and vice versa for my ancestors. I feel like those need to be. It's okay, baby. That's all right. Thank you for the. You sure can. You've been sitting behind me. It's all right. And some good books that you can read. Hold on. Get something like. Well, hold on.
Hello. I'm just.
This book is called Honoring Your Ancestor, A Guide to Ancestral Veneration by Mallory Valdos. Now, this is a white woman, I'm not gonna lie. However, a lot of these are was she white or is she Latina? I know she's not black, but this is rooted also in Catholicism. I think she's white, but it just talks about like ancestral veneration. This highlights the importance of it in the sense of healing your bloodline. Like that, when you're thinking of ancestor veneration, that's what you're doing. You are elevating your ancestors from the past, acknowledging their sacrifices and expressing gratitude for that, but also learning from their mistakes, healing past, you know, attempting to rectify or heal past karmic debts, or either free yourself from past decisions and karmic debts. Like, so the next generation, when you leave, is elevated as well, and you can kind of continue that cycle as well. So this is a really good book. It talks about, and even when you think about music as well, like I said, music with Santísima Muerte is different from music in hoodoo. When you just think about the context of what they're talking about in hoodoo, a lot of it is, you know, they're discussing escape routes, or they're talking about, you know, trials and tribulations and keeping their spirits up while working the cotton fields. It's just a lot of pain but joy that's represented in music, versus in Santis and Muerte, music is a lot more like celebratory, acknowledgement, you know, testimonial even. But this is a really, really great book to read. It was suggested to me by King Clairvoyant. I love her. If you need some devotees to follow, King Clairvoyant, Bossy Bruja, Hoodoo Hannah. I have a video of a couple of people. Check out my TikTok if you need recommendations on that. This is a book right here by Eddie S. Glaude Jr., African American Religion. This talks about even, because I think he grew up as a black person who was Catholic, and he talks about the difference and the nuance in gospel music and the impact that it made, historically speaking, about, you know, the progress of the African American race through the NAACP evolution, stuff like that. Great read. Short read, but it's literally explaining how African American religion was used as a way to experience freedom and progress towards freedom. So it's very specific and nuanced, like I said, in regards to the difference between the two. It really boils down to culture in the people and the bloodline. That's really what it boils down to. And understanding that hoodoo is a closed practice. Hoodoo is not open to all lineages. All lineages do not have access to the ancestors and the magic, and it's just that's something that, like I said, it's a closed practice. If anybody try to tell you otherwise, they a lie. And tell them to go, if they want to tap into hoodoo, yeah, go play in Lake Lanier, because a lot of our ancestors do want revenge. A lot of our ancestors are angry. A lot of our ancestors are lost. A lot of our ancestors are in pain. So that's another way, like I said, to heal the trauma and heal the lineage. This is another book I had to read in college. This is called African American Religious History, a documentary witness. This is the second edition by Milton C. Cernit. This is a thicker read, obviously so, but this literally takes you back from like Yoruba and Igbo all the way down to like breaking down how the various denominations came about, all the way up to what generation? I want to say to like 1979, the Black Church in 1979, something like that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it brings you up to like 1979, 1980. So two great reads, and then also the Bible as well if you're looking to, you know, take that deep dive. For Santis and Muerte, you know, the Holy Bible, that's one, but I don't like some of the stuff in there. But what I will say is I do like the back of the prayers, like the rosary, and I like the novena prayers and like the daily prayers. I like that one in the Santis and Muerte Holy Bible. There's also another one. It's literally called Santa Muerte, and it looks like it has a I'm trying to think who wrote that book. But I like to read more peer review articles on her, because understanding the cultural nuance and the impact on her emphasis on building community, what Santis and Muerte represents to giving back, like philanthropy is concerned, even how it's affected the political and various political climate and geographical locations is really, really important. And a lot of you would probably say, that's not what I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about venerating Santis and Muerte. It should be. Because if you don't understand why you're doing something, you don't understand where something comes from, you know, that's like saying you want a cake or you want to bake a cake, but you don't know the ingredients to bake the cake. You have to have some level of like foundational understanding and precedence before moving forward, because it quickly then can become cultural appropriation, one, or two, you can open up some stuff that you don't know how to, I don't say don't know how to close. It's not because you can't close it, but just, you know, dive deep into something before you're ready. And now you're wondering, you know, that's when you have people talk about spiritual psychosis and this, that, and the third, okay? But I don't want, it's already like 20 minutes long. Don't worry, when we're going to come back, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the robes. Specifically when you see robes in different colors. And we're also going to talk about setting up your first altar and personalizing that. And yeah, so I have to take my daughter to gymnastics, but when I get back, I'll make the other video. Talk to you soon.